Hello, welcome to This Week in Tyranny. It's episode 171, March 15th. I am your host, Conrad Bogus. I gotta talk about something I really don't like to talk about, that I don't want to talk about. But at least I can give you a really unique and deep study that you're not going to get about the war in Iran. Actually, this is something that has affected me personally. Like in the past week, as long as I've been looking into this, um, yeah, it's not something that just bounces off of me. War is tragic. The topic that we're talking about is tragic, regardless of the motives, the reasons, or all of the contexts. The mutual annihilation of life by human beings, that's a tragedy. And that's it. Me, I'm approaching this journalistically. I'm a journalist. My intent is to do honest citizen journalism. That's all I can do. Which means I gotta take an honest look at a tragic and disturbing topic. My approach to covering war and things like this, atrocities, mass casualties, it's this. I trust only video, especially with wars where nations are involved, right? So there's a political interest. I only trust video. I trust first-hand video footage. Either that, or if I'm going to trust second-hand reports, it's going to be trusted and reputable sources who have a great record. Like if you have somebody who's in Iran, you have somebody who's in China, you could talk to them, you trust them, you know who they are, then you can trust them. Other than that, it's just video. So out of those two criteria that I give, essentially that second one, trusted sources, it excludes almost everyone in the world that's in media, right? I don't trust the media. Other than what I can actually see, I'm going to assume all the mainstream narratives, all the news stories, all of the coverage, all of it is potential war propaganda to me, if you ask me. And that's not to say I disbelieve things unreasonably. I'm just saying it's much safer to rely on the people who are actually there. First-hand reports, primary sources. Now, of course, media, they get paid too. So the largest media organizations as well, they do their due diligence. Sometimes they have to, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be employed. Um, so I'm not saying distrust the media always. I'm just saying specifically when the topic is war, there's a long record of the live narrative not matching reality. And very often the truth about the war comes out 10, 20, 50 years after the fact. That happens a lot. And actually, it's hard for me to name one armed conflict anywhere in the world where what the people thought during the conflict and what they thought after the conflict was the same thing. Very rarely is that the case. So this all leads me to rely primarily on visual evidence, video footage. We're going to cover some of that in this episode. Mostly videos on X, or for the formerly known as Twitter, what I'm going to call X.com, okay? We're going to be watching X.com videos, and that's field journalism. That's the reality of what I can do. Field journalism is when you go out into an active location of the topic you are covering, and it would be amazing if I could do that, go out there with a microphone and a camera crew and the lights, but I'm not able to do it. But believe it or not, this is the modern day equivalent. You go into the virtual field and you see what kind of primary sources you can find people uploading. As we explore some of these reports and accounts, it's possible that you're going to see some disturbing content. That's due to the nature of the topic. Okay, so I'm not pre-screening this. It's not my intention to show you anything disturbing, but I cannot control every bit of information on my screen, so just please be aware of that. Okay, some of the content may be disturbing. Now, the war in Iran. So Iran, this is officially and colloquially referred to as the 2026 Iran War that started February 28, 2026. I think it's a misnaming already. It's because this is really an extension of the war and killing throughout the Middle East that has been going on. War in the Middle East is not all that new. The Middle East and Africa, it's constantly experiencing political turmoil and violence. But this specific iteration of war in the Middle East, I'm going to switch screens now, and I'm going to be showing you all these things. This is the Middle Eastern crisis 2023 to the present. This is the way Wikipedia is showing it. I think this is how history will remember it. Okay, so what happened here, these are all sorts of conflicts of all the nations in the region, starting with the October 7 attacks in Israel. So you've got a lot going on. You've got increased Israeli aggression in the region, Like the invasion of Syria, they've invaded Syria as well. They've attacked Iran. Israel, of course, has invaded the Gaza Strip. And it's not just Israeli intensified aggression, but also Israel's enemies, which are militant Islamic groups, like the attackers on October 7th, 2023. Right? The names of those militant organizations, they change every few years. It used to be the Muslim Brotherhood, then the Taliban, then Al-Qaeda, then ISIS, and now it's Hamas and Hezbollah. Okay? Their aggression has intensified. I'm calling it as I see it, right? Like, I'm not just blaming one side. Like, we have just objectively intensified aggression. And also, now you have the Houthis, or I shouldn't say now, but you have the Houthis, which are a militant group in Yemen. They're attacking commercial vessels. I don't know if you can see that easily. Not necessarily here. So picture like Somali pirates hijacking ships, stealing, kidnapping in the Red Sea, right? Going towards the Suez Canal, if my geography is correct. Of course, I think you've heard about the Strait of Hormuz being closed, right? So we're talking about global shipping lines being attacked, and you have this group that just, attacks commercial vessels. I wanted to show you some of this. So some of this fallout of the Middle Eastern crisis, as they call it, starting in 2023. You've got Israeli settler violence, got the attack on October 7th, then Israel invades the Gaza Strip, general conflict between Jews and Muslims. Here you have the attacks on commercial vessels that I wanted to show you. I will show you all of these attacks, and every single one of these affects trade. It doesn't just affect that one ship that went down, and it affects all the other ships that have to do business there. There's a lot of fallout. I'll try not to get bogged down in all of it, but you have another United States attacks in Yemen. That was 2025. Israeli invasion of Lebanon ends in a ceasefire. Fall of the Assad regime, which we're going to talk about. Israeli airstrikes on Qatar. So, the Qatar and the United Arab Emirates as well are affected. Then you have the Iran war, and of course the killing of Khomeini. And all of this is just within the last few years. Now, let me say this. These militant groups, they're not, no, I'm not trying to defend them, but all political parties are potential militant groups. I think there's some hypocrisy here in the way they're framed. The mentality and the groupthink, the tribalism is the same. I really think the only thing separating American Democrats and Republicans from walking around like those guys with the rifle slung on their shoulders, right, on top of the Humvees and the pickup trucks with a bunch of guys, the only difference is the society comes from a different history. There's just a different way of life. We just argue differently. There are different things we can get away with, but it's the same kind of mentality. If the environmental circumstances were different, you would have the same kind of political violence and treatment here. This is why I don't trust politics. Anyway, the recent high-profile involvement of the United States and then the synchronized attack of Iran by the USA and Israel, that's not in a vacuum. That's a progression of a long-term conflict. History will not see these as separate, okay? So that's my introduction and a lot of what I have to say about the war in Iran. Because I don't spend all my time doing this. I am a part-time journalist, right? But the key thing to remember about the Middle East is that just this general region is where all of the money interests converge. All kinds of money, oil money, tech money. It's the cradle of civilization. It has history. It has resources. There's a certain rulership style and dictators and people that you can pay off, and there's so much money going through there. The shipping lanes, and commercially it's such a heartland. So because of that state of friction and constant turmoil, they want to keep it's purposefully kept that way. It's like a cauldron or a fire pit, and it is in the interest of, I don't want to say they, but various interests, those based in America, those based in Israel, as well as other which are nowadays modern contemporary corporate interests, but those are the remnants of old world empires, right? Whatever Napoleon was, whatever the King of England, King Edward, King William, King Charles, you know, of Spain, and all of these nations, you know, those riches, those interests are still there somewhere, and we may not see them as we used to, but those interests are there, and it is in their interests to just keep throwing more incendiary materials into the cauldron that is the Middle East and just finance more and more radical groups. Financing radical groups to have perpetual conflict, most notorious for this is Israel, and we're going to look at this now. This is an article called Israel and State-Sponsored Terrorism. This is a Wikipedia article. I reference Wikipedia not because it's necessarily the gold standard for knowledge, but it is a very good standard for knowledge that is accepted, right? So you could see that this is mainstream knowledge, right? This isn't fringe knowledge, and I reference Wikipedia for that reason because there has been more criticism of Israel lately, but in general, criticism of Israel is something that is kind of fringe, right? So this is what I'm saying is, what I'm about to say is not fringe, it's not extreme, it's the most established history. What is this about? The state of Israel has been accused of engaging in state-sponsored terrorism. Okay? And we're not necessarily talking about what is going on in the Palestinian territories. There are these other countries that have condemned. Oh, okay, they have condemned it, so we won't do hearsay. But what I want to reference is them financing attacks against Israel, right, for their own interests. And you have an early example is the Levant affair, which I talked about last week, and there are more. You have the Palestine War, 1948, Operation Cast Thy Bread. This is early Zionism, right? What was this? I'm not familiar with this one. So I guess it was against civilians. That's what makes it terrorism. Baghdad bombings. The Levant affair, of course, it was a false flag operation, according to this, right? It's known that they had plans to plant bombs in Egypt against Israel, right? To have a pretext for war, forced landing of Syrian aircraft, and then this is the one that I really wanted to highlight: 1970s and 80s military support to dictatorships. Since the 1970s, Israel has provided military support to a range of dictatorial regimes in South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Asia. Between 1970 and 1980, Israel accounted for 80% of military imports in El Salvador leading up to the Salvadorian Civil War. There's Guatemala, there's Indonesia. Okay, this is not even getting into their support for Hamas, which there's evidence for. There's Lebanon. Proxies against Iran. So Israel and Iran are belligerent enemies. I was scanning through it to see if this is what I wanted to share with you. It is. Though they have never been at war until now, Israel and Iran, both nations make efforts to undermine the other's influence in the region through various means: diplomatic, economic, and military. This includes the use of often armed proxies, which facilitate indirect conflict between the powers. And in the case of Iranian proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah, outright war. The Israeli government supports various armed groups in its conflict with the Iranian government. And I see there's a question mark. Which ones, right? Because that's that's hard to pin down. But that is known. That is known that repeatedly and systematically Israel supports. They support, they equip, and sometimes they even train the people that end up being their enemies years and years later. And all of that benefits Israel. Maybe not today, maybe not the people living there, but it benefits them moving forward because the aggression against Israel and the general turmoil in the Middle East, that justifies continued involvement. Not just by Israel, but all of the world, sending money, moving the money back and forth. Of course, Israeli lobbying in the United States is well known. There's a relation there, and as long as there's war and conflict, money has to go there. All of the world's money. So the people of the world through increased military funding in their own country, through higher prices in their countries, through the manufactured necessity for other government functions, right? Like the Patriot Act and scannings at airports and all of these greater surveillance measures and anti-terrorism measures, anti-money laundering measures. All of this costs the people more money. It makes life harder for them. I'm not saying it doesn't provide valuable services. That's not really the point I'm making. I'm just saying it costs the people. It makes life worse for everybody, but it benefits the rulers because they want to send the money that way. It keeps them in power. It keeps them with their influence. And that's not just my opinion, that's documented history, as you can see. Okay, Israel provided funding, weapons, and medical assistance to wounded Syrian rebels. Um, they of course, Syria. That's where you had Assad. Assad's regime fell for a long time. The Israel has been a great enemy of Assad, and vice versa. And now you have, we're going to see what's going on in Syria as well. It's one of the places that I'm going to the field for. And that is the war in Iran, which also I'll show you here. It's not just a war in Iran, it's a revival of belligerence in the region. You see all of these dots here, blue ones and red ones. This is not just the country of Iran. You have attacks in Syria. Iran's a pretty big country. That's most of it over here, but also on the coast of Oman, the United Arab Emirates, right? Saudi Arabia, Yemen. If you zoom out of here, you had the sinking of an Iranian vessel off the coast of Sri Lanka. Of course, that affects things because India is the preferred security partner for traffic in the Indian Ocean, right? So it throws all of that into question. All of this costs money. All of this disturbs the economic stability, right? The economic status quo. You even had a bombing in Cyprus. Wow, overseas. Drone strikes on Akrotiri and Dhekelia, apparently launched by Hezbollah. Now, often you'll see launched by or backed by, and this is a side point that I want to mention. We don't really know this. We don't know who's backed by who or who's funding them. And often that is just thrown around. Where you have something happening and someone in the media will say, yes, this group is backed by that country to justify, to gain public support for war against that country. And that is done all the time now. But again, I just want to say that, we can read these events and these general storylines. But at the end of the day, we don't know what's going on or who's backing who. And we can only hold the people accountable that we know are signing off on it, commanders in chief, people who you see doing it. But I don't get into the backed by, funded by game, because at the end of the day, we don't know, and I don't want to act like I know. So, many countries involved. It's chaos in the Middle East, bombings, Maybe not necessarily war like World War One in the trenches, but there's conflict that's disturbed everything. I think it's very similar to post 9/11, early 2000s Middle East, and you got the same patterns. You got a proxy Muslim attack, you got then belligerent Republican leaders in Israel and USA. How George W. Bush was acting around that time, towards the middle and end of his two presidencies, is very similar to Donald Trump and his administration. Same thing with Israel. I don't know who was in charge of there, but Israel has always been at war with its neighbors. That's just the story, right? Invasions and bombings of several targets going on in various Middle Eastern countries. That's the same thing that happened in the mid 2000s. It wasn't just one country. It was the U.S. invasion of Iraq, but it was also Kuwait. It was also Saudi Arabia. It was Yemen then too. It was Lebanon then too. It was Syria then too. And Iran is always in the crosshairs. And then regime change follows. We had regime change there. We had Bin Laden went down. Saddam Hussein went down. And now we have Assad going down. And that is what's going on in Iran. Now, that is the Iran war. People have pointed out that the United States government doesn't have a great justification for being there, right? But I wanted to investigate something else, also in Iran, which is the Iran massacres, the 2026 Iran massacres. So in Iran, the war didn't just appear all of a sudden, as I've mentioned. There have been domestic tensions increasing in Iran because their government has been increasingly radical and authoritarian. Governments tend to do that in general. They become authoritarian. In the West, they do it slowly and incrementally, but it's the same idea as what's going on. That's what was happening in Iran. Rising prices, getting harder to live, people are fed up, people have nowhere to turn to. And in Iran, there were, I couldn't remember her name, but I just remembered it, Masa Amini. There have been some high profile killings of women in Iran that were not wearing their head coverings. So this adds to the tensions, right? And so the young people in Iran, they protested towards the end of December and through January and February. So what happened was, what do you think happened? First they shut down the internet on the 8th, but they were already killing, and the death toll of this is 7 to 36,000 civilians unarmed killed by the government. These are the results. 2026 Iran massacres. And before we look at some of these reports from the field, yeah, the USA attacks on Iran, they are completely unjustified. They're completely groundless and baseless. Sure, they are. And as I talk about, the stories that the politicians tell us are war propaganda. I gave my take on the real reasons for why all these wars go down in the Middle East. But I just want to say, before we even look at anything, the armed people who represent the Iranian government and the flag, they're not the good guys in this scenario against Israel and the United States. I don't see them as the good guys in this scenario. I don't see them as self-defenders. It is these unarmed civilians in Iran that are the good guys. I was just checking if you see this. You're going to see a lot of images like this, okay? These are the good guys, and nobody talks about them. And they were getting killed by their own government, and now there are airstrikes in their country. Maybe they're getting killed by the Israeli and United States government. I'm sure they are. But this is before the invasion happened, 7 to 36,000 men, women, and children. And when we hear about an airstrike in Iran, we can even see the explosion. Okay, but we don't know if the people in that building were the good guys or they were the bad guys. We just don't know. So people should shut the fuck up about your war analysis, like you know something about it. All this geopolitical inside baseball. These pretentious, habitual screen dwellers. They just live on the screen and they just talk at you all day like they know about this, and they're older than me, and I feel like some of them have lived through wars, and I feel like they should know better. Like they should have more dignity about this war coverage. A lot of bottom-feeding scum of the internet ocean, seriously, talking about war and like they know what's going on and like they know who's involved. War is a fucking mess. We don't know what's going on. We never know what's going on. And the flags and the diagrams and the alliances, all that stuff is for the marks. It's for the fans. Like fans who put on the jersey of their team and then they go sit on the couch and they watch the game. That's for you, all of the inside baseball on war. That's for these guys. The truth of war is it's a fucking mess. And nobody knows who's being killed or why. We don't find out. It's just a mess most of the time. The reasons for killing. There are no righteous wars out here. There are no holy wars, spiritual wars. War's a fucking mess. And it's a tool of the rich, bloodthirsty ruler. The rulers, and they keep raking in the resources through regimes, all different countries. And they keep raking in the resources. They keep, living lavish. And we keep filling the mass graves and the body bags. Every generation. All throughout history, and it keeps happening. Our people are going to die in these wars regardless of what country you're at. The leaders are sitting pretty. So we're going to go into the field now and look at this stuff. You can see I already searched up some things, right? So again, some of this content, we're just going to see what we see. This is a tweet from some person. Israel has just committed a massacre in the Gaza Strip, right? Dropping a heavy bomb in the midst of Palestinian civilians. I'm not going to play any audio here. So, I don't know who, yeah, it's, by the way, sorry for anything that you may see, right? It is not my intention to show you anything graphic or disturbing, just going to the field reports and seeing what's going on. So, in this, so here's something I'll say. Just because a tweet or a caption says something doesn't mean we're 100% sure. No, like the caption and the title is not universal truth. So I cannot tell you where that's from or whether the actual video depicts what the description says it depicts. I don't know this. I would just say that there are ways to independently verify the accuracy of the information, starting with the language. You start with the language, you start with what the people are saying, and you can get an idea of where they're from. And then you would look at what's going on in the region. And then also what strengthens the credibility of that information is if you got many different videos, many different reports showing a similar thing, same scenery, same location. Then you know, oh, this is probably true, what they're depicting. But this is from the so this is from the current conflict. It's on X.com. You just have to basically all images and videos have a content warning, and you never know what you're going to see. This video, I have seen this video before. This is a father going through a scene of a massacre by the Iranian government. See, why didn't you condemn the massacre of 32,000 by Iran's regime? If you are anti-war, stand with the victims of the IRGC war. Someone is saying this, right? They have a white flag in their bios. They're anti-war, so am I. This is a dad looking for his child that went out to protest, okay, before the invasion. And they're saying 32,000, so I wouldn't be surprised. And you see, this is the aftermath. It seems to be not that long after. You've got a translation what he's saying. Obviously I can't translate it for you, but this definitely is a credible video, as you can just see by the. Anyway, you can verify this independently, right? I'm just gonna skip forward. There are different locations that
سپر جان کجایی بابا
women and children. And I've seen other videos from that same scene, so I would say that's definitely a credible source. Here's another video. I don't know what we're watching yet. I know what we're watching, but as far as who and where, this is warning graphic. Forces from the Islamic regime in Iran using acts on protests to free Iran from the Islamic regime. Footage from the massacre at the start of the year. Right, so you see a lot of that, and this is what I wanted to show you, is that the war has not just started. There has been killing there, and nobody really, it's not that nobody was talking about it, but certainly it was a different tone. It was like, civilians dying in the Middle East. Everyone's used to that. It's not the first time we've seen it. Now, of course, we've had the bomb dropped on the schools. I believe this is what it is. Many children. I think 170 in some school. Right. So it's hard to know what you're looking at. But when I haven't even, filtered it out too much, every other video I click on just has stacks of bodies. When you look at these visuals, it all looks the same. I don't know what country they're from. I don't know who killed them, but it's all the fucking same. And I'm thinking, like, don't you guys see? Don't you get it? They brainwash us into killing our neighbors. Old strategies, old patterns that just work on us, and they keep getting our young men to join the armed forces, and whoever goes to do this, there's another generation of them, and this is who does it. Now that's Iran, right? But this is happening all across the world right now. So we're going into things, conflicts that are happening in real time right now or in the past 6 months or so, right? This is Tanzania. This woman that you're seeing, this is Samia. This is the leader right now in Tanzania. Now they had an election in October, and this leader, this woman on the left with the glasses on, they claimed a 97.66% victory. And the week before, they arrested some opposition leaders. So there were protests, naturally. Tanzania is a country in East Africa, I believe. It's in Africa, I know. So what happened later? What do you think happened? There were thousands of killings. 3,000 to 10,000 are the estimates. And you see somebody crawling out. You see the... I don't need to describe this footage. So this is just... You see, these are not combatants, right? It's kids... children, men, women, and children. That's what happened in Tanzania to crush the protest. This is a CNN report. Exclusive investigation finds Tanzanian police killed protesters. Right, this was in October of 2025. This is a woman who's reporting on it from Tanzania. More citizen journalists, right? And you can see more of this. These are not combatants, just protesters. And it is all... You see this? Doesn't this look just like Iran? What's the difference? What's the difference? Caption is, this is what Samia Suluhu has done in Tanzania. This is a mortuary full of bodies. Samia Suluhu, an armed a killer militia to kill innocent people in Tanzania. Time and time again, this is what happens. And this is the person. This is the face of a person responsible for 3,000 to 10,000. And these people carried it out. Now that's Tanzania. What else is there? South Sudan. South Sudan has been in a violent power struggle since Omar al-Bashir was overthrown in 2019. Right? So 2 militant groups overthrew this leader who's been in power forever. Again, the leader that was in power before, I'm sure he was a war criminal as well. I'm sure he was a dictator. He was a bad guy. But 2 military groups overthrow him, the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces. I won't guess what the RSF and what the SAF are about, right? What are their differences? Who finances them or why? I'm not going to pretend to know. But they have been fighting each other in a civil war since 2023. Similar story, destabilization in the region, foreign intervention, regime change, and then just open violence and more chaos in the transitional period. They always call it a transitional period that follows. So they're fighting each other, which of course means they aren't just fighting each other, but they're also killing innocent people, right, in South Sudan. So similar, you see the term that I'm typing in to see this, Look at this. The group the U.S. designated as a terrorist organization did this to a South Sudanese child. This is common. These things that you're looking at are commonly attributed to the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. I won't make any claims as to who's doing it. I don't know. All I'm saying is, I'm seeing visuals like this is actually in Syria. You see, these are prisoners, and you've got some kind of an armed group, right? Another aftermath. According to this tweet, the UAE backed. Okay, so again, they're going to tell you who's backing them. They want to say this is the Arab Emirates doing it. I don't know. I don't know who's doing this. I don't know if it's the Rapid Support Forces. All I know is I just see grown men, young men doing this to other people. And I saw their footage where they're smiling. They're enjoying it. They're having fun with it. You see, there's a similar video. Right, this you see it by the people who attacked the rifle. Yeah, just seems like rifle through the place. Now maybe some of these were combatants, but I see old men. There you go, just executed right there. Very casual. And we've seen this throughout history. When they get these these rebel groups or whatever you want to call them, these gangs, it's just a slaughter rampage. Like we've seen it throughout history. They don't care who they're killing. They don't care for what reason. It's the result of brainwashing or being paid by someone. And of course, there are psychological factors, like you grow up abused, you grow up bullied. That's kind of who fills these ranks of these gangs, you know. Right, they're saying RSF did it. I don't know who did it. Look at this. These are people who they don't look like combatants anyway. They're unarmed. They're defenseless people. Now they're saying they're jihading. They're Hamas, but this is in Sudan. I don't know, but I could tell you it's in Africa. But look, I'm seeing the same thing over and over again. Look at this guy showing up the peace sign with his rifle, you know? Footage emerges from Sudan showing gunmen machine gunning civilians. Nothing new. We've seen it before. And then there's Syria. The last of our atrocities are coming from Syria. We're going all around the world. Syria, as I mentioned, has been partially invaded by Israel now. The rulership in Syria right now is an absolute mess. So Assad's regime fell December 8th, 2024. I remember hearing about Israel and the US wanting to overthrow Assad like 15 years ago. It's the same as the Iran invasion. I heard it back then. Well, since 2023, it's been starting to happen, right? And now in Syria, you have all kinds of militant groups, ethnic groups. According to some, what we're going to see is... What are they saying? Terrible atrocities committed by the Syrian General Security Forces. So, and you know, I'm seeing these things, like this account is called Hamas Atrocities. This guy is posting, several videos. So there could be propaganda here as well. But there's no faking this. There's no faking that. Right, and you can see by the letters this is in the region, so that's going to be in Syria. Okay, this is what's going on over there. Now, what is the difference? What is the difference between all these? We're seeing the same thing over and over again. Look, this is somebody crawling down this little path. I wonder what's going to happen to him. Yeah, that's what happens. No respect for human life. You see it again and again, and it's them, and it's the same thing as the leaders before them. And a lot of these are apparently they're Druze civilians, D-R-U-Z-E. They're esoteric, independent, religious and ethnic group. I don't know, right? But it wouldn't surprise me that this kind of smaller group, no wonder that the most culturally independent and the unique are going to be the casualties of war. And that's what war is, isn't it? If you keep your head down and you tuck your tail like a fucking dog and you weasel your way into the biggest political faction, into the most popular faction, you may survive, right? And a lot of people made it through wars that way. And then people like my family, or the heroes that my family talked about, my lineage, those are the first people to get killed in war. Those are the first people, if you say anything thought-provoking or interesting in any way, anyone with a little bit of intelligence or courage, you're the first one to be fucking killed. And these fucking cowards and gangs, they get into factions. They're worthless human beings the way they're living. This is what they do. And they're the ones who survive wars. And that's why this happens again and again. Now, that would be the enough of field reporting, right? Sorry for any disturbing content that you may have seen. It was definitely not my intention to show you any of that. Now, as we get into reasons for why this happens, because we want to talk about why this happens and how we can solve it. What are the solutions? Before I get into it, I want to give credit to the Active Self-Protection channel, the folks over at Active Self-Protection. Not because I'm not affiliated with them. I'm sure that they won't, they won't want to affiliate with my views on things and all of these reports. But I'm going to use some of their work. some of their work as the basis for what I'm about to put forth as the reasons, and definitely the solutions. So, to John Correa and the folks at Active Self Protection, I'll be using the ASP acronym, just letting you guys know that's a great YouTube channel. So I think it's one of the best. It's one of my top favorite channels in YouTube history. Consistent, grown over time, helped many people, made it through different eras of YouTube. So it's a full endorsement for me, seriously. And these guys are, they're not from my little community. So anyway, reasons why war goes down and why we keep seeing these massacres. All these tragedies occur because of the power differential between the average person like me, and then them and the young to early middle-aged men who assemble and join gangs and terrorize their communities or other communities. Whether you call it a rebel group, a militia, a gang, freedom fighting force, or whether it's the most high-tech military in the world, highly organized, respected national memory, they're the same kind of person. They do this all over the world. That's who's responsible for the stacks of bodies. And they do it because they're able to do it because the everyday civilians, the potential victims, they do not have the attitude, the skills, or the means to defend themselves against people who join violent organizations and do violent things to innocent people. Those violent people that potentially will get into a gang and start inflicting suffering on weaker people, they're not just in Iran, they're not just in South Sudan, they're not just in Syria, they're not just in Israel. There's a subsection of a population of them in every country in the world. They come from our communities, they come from our countries, they do. And there are many factors for why. One factor that I'm going to point to is like how much is life valued in your culture and your life growing up is going to affect how you think about human life in the future. It's going to affect how prone you are to violence. Did you grow up respected, or did you grow up seeing people get degraded in front of you, seeing people get abused in front of you? Did you get abused? That's going to change how you see things. Those factors, it's not possible to fully control them, right? Because this is the earth, after all. It's the whole planet. We all have to live with the consequences of everybody else's actions. But here's what we can control. We can control our attitude towards self-defense, our skills of self-defense, and our means to self-defense, our resources to self-defense for us, everyday people. That's where the solution is. It's not in politics. Political violence is terrible and stupid in all of its forms. So I'm not campaigning, I'm not crusading, I'm not organizing, none of that. Because whether it's a lone nut or whether it's a false flag, I really think it's a trap to get into speculation most of the time. I'm thinking now about the attack on the synagogue in Michigan. I saw the Ford F-150 pickup truck drive into it. Apparently it was filled with explosives. Apparently the building was burning. All I know is I saw a picture of 150 or so cop cars in the street and all on the side of the road. I saw the police responses to the pictures of the parents holding their children running out, which you see after every one of these events. And I saw a picture of the Ford F-150 crashed into the corner of the building, and I seen the sign that said Temple Israel. So I have no idea what happened there. But people do get into that, and they do a great job. And I talked about Sophia Smallstorm and Oli Damagard last week. But for us, everyday people like me, who I'm not a full-time star journalist. I'm just a regular guy. For us, for you and me, it's all the same. Whether the atrocity came from the bottom of society, as they say, or from the top, as a lot of us think. It doesn't matter. It's like a burst pipe, and you got water flooding everywhere. And we're debating on if the leak is coming from the ceiling or the floor. There's a pipe sticking out in the room leaking water. Like, that's where the issue is. We have a starting point that we can go with to stop the bleeding and to start there, and here it is. Okay, this is the solution. The self-governance of our communities has declined enormously. We're not as self-governing as we used to be. That goes down by the generation. It goes down by the minute. So what that means is we have less to say in our own cities and our own towns. what I call lateral enforcement, which is how much sway you have with the person next to you to have an understanding that you don't do certain things. And if you do certain things, you're going to have people intervene, and we're not going to let each other do these things. That's called lateral enforcement. It's not as strong. We have more top-down enforcement. And therefore, our self-defense is not as strong, because we rely on being defended by others, those whose job it is to defend ourselves. It's a fallacy. It's a fairy tale. It's no one's job to defend yourself. Your self-defense is your responsibility first and foremost, and that's what family's for. Self-defense is the first line of personal defense. It happens. Personal defense happens before we get into talking about politics, religious conflict, or foreign policy, all of that. So, as we get into talking about solutions, we have two approaches to solutions. There are two kinds of solutions. There are direct solutions and there are indirect solutions. The indirect solution is actually more important because it has to do with our atmosphere, our environmental conditions, our cultural conditions before the political or religious or military attack occurs. Ultimately, this is the moral, the mental, and the spiritual solution. I'm just saying it differently. I'm not going to say it's moral, mental, and spiritual because people tend to think about morality, philosophy, and God in a subjective way. That means different things to people. So I'm not going to stubbornly tell you otherwise in this episode. I'm not going to preach about objective morality. I'm saying it differently. There's a direct and indirect solution to the violence in society problem. So in neutral, objective terms, this is the indirect solution to violence in society. It's attitude. First and foremost, it's attitude. And not just having this attitude, but expressing this attitude and voicing it. What is the attitude? It is that you who is saying this, me, you, I am not a sacrificial lamb. I'm not going to tolerate violence in my life anywhere and everywhere. I can't force anyone to do what I want, right? But if I witness somebody inflicting violence around me, I'm going to act. I will intervene. That's the attitude. Whether that is directly physically intervening or whether it's calling for help and support to make sure that something is done about it. Basically, I'm going to do something about it. It's like a vow of intolerance. Me, I will not tolerate it. That's the attitude. And this is the more important of the two kinds of solutions to violence in society because this is the long-term one. And actually, without it, the direct solution is not even possible. So once again, it's the attitude that matters. That the attitude that you respect life, that you value life to the highest degree, that you're not going to allow yourself or other innocent people around you to be the victims of evil. You're just not going to let it happen. You're going to respond to it if it happens. Now, I think most of us already have this attitude passively. We think this. I'm talking about having this attitude actively, about living this, meaning you spend time to visualize your response if something happens, because it's never going to be like you imagine it. It's always going to be out of the blue all of a sudden, and you're not going to be ready for it unless you get ready for it. So visualizing, taking mental reps, thinking about what you're going to do, making a plan. You also live your life in a way that's light on your heart, so that if and when the time comes for you to act, you're not held down by like loose ends. I didn't tell this person I love them. You're not holding in guilt or shame or other things that are going to hold you back, that is going to conflict with you having the courage to act, right? Things that are making you afraid to act. So in addition to that lifestyle, that visualization, which are both kind of like soul searching and shadow work, then there's the voicing it part, making it active, expressing it openly that this is your attitude. And I'm not saying you should go preach on the corner, go get a sign and stand on the corner. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying to make a YouTube channel like me. I did that. I'm not saying that's the solution. The solution is you remain in your natural environment. That's your natural environment. Keep living there. You've put in a lot of work to have relationships with the people that you have. That's where you are. Stay there. And as you interact with them, make sure everyone you interact with knows that this is your attitude. that you strive to be a good person, and you're not going to tolerate violence. Starting with the people you're the closest to, because that's who you're going to have the most sway with. Like, that's the solution. And it's a long-term solution. It's not going to fix things overnight. But if implemented effectively, the attitude solution is going to solve the violence problem in society. It is. But either way, it's not reasonable to wait for a political solution to keep us safe. We can take measures ourselves to keep us safe. And that's the inner work to turn yourself into a high responder. A person that doesn't just sit quiet when something crazy happens and puts their head down when something terrible is happening, And I think we've seen that several times, what that looks like on camera. It's happened before, but with the phones, people look down at their phones and somebody's recording and they see people just walking right past someone who needs help. They're dying, they need help. Someone walks by and no one moves a finger for a long, long time until somebody finally does. I think we've all seen things like that. So that's the internal work, training yourself to be a high response individual, and the external work to be the signal and be the light for others. So then they can look at you as a real world example of this attitude. Nobody does anything unless they have an example for it, unless they think it can actually work and be implemented. So be that beacon, right? And then from there, it's their personal choice if they want to implement it, or to what degree they want to implement that attitude that you're expressing. But we got to express that attitude. But even regardless of that choice, that conscious choice, people are going to influence each other with their sheer presence, whether we like it or not. We're all influencing each other with the way we live. So it all matters. And that's the indirect solution. All of that is the indirect solution to the violence in society problem. And that's the basket we should have most of our eggs in. But if something goes wrong before that long-term solution works, there's a short-term solution, a direct solution. And that solution is the skills and the means of self-defense. And Attitude Skills Plan is the acronym from John Correa and the folks at Active Self-Protection, ASP. Well, I'm adapting it to Attitude Skills Resources, or Attitude Skills Plan. Means to and not attitude, skills, and means. Means to and resources mean the same thing. I'm talking about having the actual tools. It's about skills and tools. That's the reason for changing the last letter. It's because in my life, in the professions and trades I've entered throughout my life, I've noticed, like especially in construction, but also like music and other jobs I've had and things I've had to learn how to do. I learned that how effective, like how productive, how effective you are, it essentially comes down to two things: your skills and your tools. You could have the right, great skills. There are skilled people, and that's going to take you really far. But at some point, you're going to run into a wall if you don't have the right tools. Just changing a right tool, I'm trying so hard to drill a hole. You change the bit, you change the drill. And it's just so easy. And that's, you could have had all the skills, but if you don't have the right tools, you're not going to get it done. But you could have all the best tools. If you don't know how to use them, you're not going to get it done. You're going to run into a wall again. So these two are like limit each other, and you need to kind of build both of these up together. You push a little bit here, push a little bit there. It's having the right tools for the job and the abilities with those tools. So when those armed men show up, can you fight? Can you resist meaningfully? First, empty-handed, because if you don't have something, not everyone has access to a gun. But having an access to a gun, having a gun on your person that you can retrieve, that is huge, huge tools to have. And of course, and a medical kit as well, Have you prepared for a fight? Have you prepared by acquiring the skills and resources necessary? Everyday citizens need to maintain these skills and resources, even if they end up never having to use them. It's not about looking for trouble or only doing it if you have to, if you're in a dangerous area. You have to keep it just as a part of living. You have to maintain it. It's like, because as soon as you lose these, the skills and resources of self-defense, you become a candidate to be in one of those mass graves that we saw. And the only thing in the way of that between us and those atrocities, it's the moral character of the population, which is the attitude. So, the only reason we're not at war right now is because of the attitude, the moral character of our culture. But that's not increasing, is it? Right? So, that's about the solutions, right? Now, when we talk about war and we saw all of these terrible things, one place where you don't see scenes like this is the United States of America and Canada and maybe Western and Northern Europe, Australia, New Zealand. It's just a fact. You don't see stacks of bodies in those countries. And there's definitely violence that occurs usually domestically. And it does happen. There's gang violence, but we just don't see this. We can observe that nowadays you just don't see many visuals of white bodies in a pile. Last century we did. It was the century of democide. It was something like 20 major genocides committed by dominant governments in their region, all across the world. World War II, Japan. There was the Khmer Rouge, and so it wasn't just Europe, but it was a lot in Europe as well. Stacks and stacks of bodies, piles. Now, why do I even bring it up? I'm not a racialist, I'm not a nationalist, I'm not a culturist, I'm not a traditionalist, none of these things. But in the spirit of honest journalism, one must make the observation that, damn, if you just, spin the wheel of fortune and to get a chance at a peaceful life where you have a chance to potentially bring up a family and live a normal, decent life, you do pretty well to wind up in a predominantly white country. And that's just the way it is. So what lessons can we learn from those places? Because when it comes to war, I think we can learn lessons from the places where we don't see these things. Well, another inescapable observation is that in those places that I mentioned, the average person is relatively rich compared to other parts of the world. There's just more money. There's just more affluence. And it's not really how much money you have, but there's not such a drastic gap between the rich and poor. Because there are plenty of billionaires in some of these countries, but the average person has nothing. So it's the gap. And it is the money, and I really think money is a big part of it. It's been a controversial episode already. It's going to get more controversial because when you have money to live more comfortably, first of all, it's easier to have the good attitude. It's easier to have good attitude when you're affluent. You don't need to compromise your values or, stress out. You don't need to sacrifice so many of your wants for your self-esteem to be high. You walk around with a high self-esteem. And I'm not saying money should define your self-worth. I'm saying it does. It just fucking does. It's easier to give to others when you have money. It won't fix you if you're broken. It won't fix you if you're a criminal. It won't buy you happiness. But if you already are a decent person, money is going to make you a better person. It's going to improve your attitude. It's going to allow you to support more decent people like you, that you like. Imagine if you could pay a high character artist instead of just a mercenary, someone who doesn't care about the job. Imagine if you could employ people who you value and respect the most so they don't have to work for some bullshit corporation or immoral guy. Then that gives them more power. Then you're starting to build. You're starting to build from there. Also, if you don't have to work as hard or work as long, you got more time to acquire skills, not just self-defense skills, but life skills that you value. So you're getting the attitude, you're getting the skills, and then of course the resources. You can definitely get the means, right? If you have the money, you can buy things that protect you and your family. You can decrease your dependence on shady people that you don't trust. You're going to be able to move to a safer place. That's what all the corrupt leaders of all these other countries did. They got all this money and they paid armed guards until they got their own paramilitary groups. That's what happens. Somebody owns all of these killers and it grew into an army. It works for psycho dictators, but it works for good moral people as well. Financially support people who have your values and they support you. That's called family, right? So what's wrong with that? And I know things have swung way too far in the West, especially America. It's like people have gone insane for money and completely left behind the values, the standards, left behind family, left behind nature. Agreed. All of that agreed. But there is a direct and indirect solution to this too, the materialism problem. The indirect solution, the indirect and long term, yeah, we have to make people see what truly matters in this world, which is what? Love, respect, and freedom. That's the most important things in the world. Love, respect, and freedom. But there's a direct and short-term solution too. You could make some good fucking money and spend some good money on good people that truly matter. And that'll help too. That'll move us closer. So I certainly wouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater here when it comes to America and, white culture, so to speak. The principles of the American independence and the spirit of the Industrial Revolution, I'm not giving those up. I don't care what other people did. Those are things that I'm keeping. That spirit, I'm keeping that with me. When all around the world the history is mass graves, fucking atrocities and massacres all over the world. Not in America. And I'm supposed to give up these values like I'm to blame, like we're to blame for materialism, like the Declaration of Independence is to blame for corporatism and materialism. Like we dared to think that, all men are created equal. And then it's like all of the slavery of the world, you try to put that on white people. Just why? Because they have money? Sometimes people who have a lot of money piss me off too. My friend tries to share Bitcoin stuff with me and like money stuff, and I get pissed off because I know how it is. But it's not their fault. Why would we give up the good things about this country? Why would we give up affluence and having the fucking audacity to say I deserve respect? That's not entitlement. That's calling your shot and working for it. And it's not about the flag. Fuck the flag. I fight for love. I fight for freedom. I fight respect. That's my flag. Okay? Now, the counter argument, okay? The Achilles heel of this argument that I just made is, well, what about the United States school shootings? What about the school shootings in America? There's there's piles of bodies there. And I have to say, you got me there. But remember what I said about war propaganda? I said when it comes to things like this, like the wars, like the mass deaths, at the end of the day, you know what I'm going to trust? I'm going to base my conclusions on the visual evidence. The video, if you will. And I've been respectful of every tragedy. As long as I have 171 episodes, I've talked about it. Everyone who I've talked about who's died, I'm respectful. I give parents the benefit of the doubt always, always, always. But every life matters, no matter what color or what age. Every life matters when we're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, 100,000 people dead that I showed you, in these conflicts. Millions affected. We're not even talking about the people starving and the people displaced and the violence that's happening because of that. When those are the stakes, I can't rely on war propaganda for my conclusions. I'm going to base my conclusions on what I can prove and see. And I understand the way we do things, right? We don't release videos of dead children. I get it. Usually we don't even release their names. I understand. I get it. But then it's not my fault for being insensitive. All I can look is what I see. So it's just like Israel with their history of state-sponsored terrorism, right? They have a whole history of state-sponsored terrorism, and they're always the victims somehow. But we're supposed to believe that Americans or Canadian or Australian regular citizens are the violent ones. They'd have you think that American regular guys are the violent ones, like the country boy who's out there fishing and just happy to be alive. Yeah, these are supposed to be the violent ones. The apparently American regular kids are shooting up the schools all over the place. Well, I'll have to say to that, show me the video. And this video hopefully is one you enjoyed on whatever platform that may be. If you did enjoy, please remember to give a thumbs down and report my channel for misconduct. Thank you so much. I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.